Hey everyone. Today we're talking all about gut health and the relationship with our overall health. Are probiotics and fiber supplements for everyone? Are there specific foods that we should be avoiding, especially with the rates of colorectal cancer on the rise in younger people? We're really diving into it all and getting to speak with gastroenterologist Daniela Guerrero Vinsard. She is an assistant professor of medicine at the Minneapolis VA and University of Minnesota. She completed her internal medicine residency at the University of Connecticut and her GI fellowship at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. Her primary interests are advanced endoscopic resections of GI tumors and inflammatory bowel disease. Her research is on artificial intelligence for colorectal cancer prevention. She also has a passion for mentorship, leadership, as well as fitness. She's certified as a hot yoga instructor and was a dance instructor years ago during medical school. Health and fitness have always been such a large part of who she is, and she truly leads her patients by example. So take a listen to the full episode as we explore everything GI health. Welcome to the Lifestyle PA podcast, where we talk about all things women's health and lifestyle to help you become the healthiest and happiest version of yourself. All right, Daniela, thank you again so much for joining us today. So let's just kick things off by just tell me really what you've been seeing a lot in practice when it comes to just overall gut health lately.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Beth, again for having me. I am so excited to be talking to you and really all the audience about gut health today. So I specialize in sort of very specific areas within gastroenterology, and therefore the type of patients that I see, of course, are more skewed towards that subspecialty. My area or my field of interest is especially inflammatory bowel disease, which is ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. And I also specialize on endoscopic resection of precancerous lesions in the GI tract. So, of course, most of my practice is going to be geared towards those patients. But I also see quite a bit of general GI patients. And by that, I mean a lot of upper GI symptoms related with heartburn, related with acid reflux types of conditions, and also lots of lower abdominal symptoms related with constipation, diarrhea, bloating. I would say those are the bread and butter of every gastroenterology practice, and we're always seeing that for sure.
Yeah. And tell me, so now with like inflammatory bowel disease, any of these inflammatory processes that you're seeing, because I, of course, am not a gastroenterologist, but I feel like these things are on a rise. And do you feel like that is more autoimmune related? Is it more because of our like general American diet or just overall inflammation? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think, Beth, there's a very important point to touch there, and it's to differentiate inflammatory bowel diseases from irritable bowel syndrome. IBD versus IBS, right? Those two are completely different disease mechanisms. And oftentimes I have patients who come to me and they are confused between those two. They think they have one, but they actually have the other. Okay. So inflammatory bowel disease, mainly ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, are conditions that are multifactorial, meaning there's not one single explanation to say, this is why you have the condition. We think it is related with multiple mechanisms. There's a little bit of genetics, a lot of autoimmunity in this condition, and also, environmental factors. So we have very specific ways to diagnose and very specific ways to treat inflammatory bowel disease. Okay. And meanwhile, irritable bowel syndrome is another condition. Oh, I think I lost you. I lost you, Beth.
You're back.
Beth,
Yes. Can you hear
you're
me?
there?
Yeah.
Yes, I
It
think so.
did.
I lost you
Yeah,
for
it
a
said your
second.
connection was lost, but sometimes it'll like restore and come back. So I think you had just started to break up at like for the treatment for inflammatory bowel disease.
So I was telling you that regarding inflammatory bowel disease, we have very specific ways to treat and diagnose those conditions. And also, patients present with very specific symptoms related to that condition. Meanwhile, irritable bowel syndrome, the symptoms are very different. Okay. And then the diagnosis of irritable bowel syndrome is really what we call a diagnosis of exclusion. So once we have excluded all other conditions that can create or cause those symptoms, then we diagnose the patient with this functional disorder called irritable bowel syndrome. Again, the treatment and the cause for irritable bowel syndrome is very complex, and it's completely different from the treatment and cause of IBD or inflammatory bowel disease. Now, that doesn't mean that a patient with IBD cannot have IBS. Many times we have both coexisting. And again, it's a matter of working with your doctor and digging very deep into the symptoms, the diagnosis, and then the treatment and the approach to getting better.
And I feel like that's really challenging too with IBS, right? Because, like you said, there can be an overlap in symptoms, but it can look different for every person. And I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but with IBS, there's a large, almost psychosomatic component. So, how, your stress, emotional, mental health can really worsen your symptoms. Have you seen that in
Yes,
practice?
absolutely. And I think that we have a widest spectrum of functional disorders of the GI tract. And by functional, Beth, I want to clarify with you and the audience, these are disorders that unfortunately the traditional Western medicine, we don't have one single test that we can offer the patient that's going to come back positive and tell me, oh yeah, you have IBS. And we don't have one single pill, like a magic pill to give the patient that's going to cure it. Unfortunately, we wish we had such a tool, right? But again, because we don't have this, we have to exclude other things that could be giving the patients this type of symptoms, bloating, diarrhea, even constipation, right? So that's where the workup comes up. And then, we have to rule out other things like celiac disease, which many times can present with overlapping symptoms. Again, Crohn's disease could do that. And yes, so once we have ruled out these conditions that require a very specific treatment, right? We tell the patient, hey, we're dealing with what looks like it's IBS, right? And then the treatment for IBS, the approach to it is also multidisciplinary. Okay. Again, I don't have a pill to give you that's going to take away your IBS, but let's dig deeper into how you're eating, what's going on in your life, right? What's happening in your personal relationships? How was your childhood? So many things that can play a role into IBS. Why? Because IBS is a disorder of the gut and brain connection. This is a term that we are all very familiar with, that our guts are our second brains, right? And that's absolutely true. Our brain is absolutely connected in a very, very strong way with our gut function. It's a very complex mechanism that entails a lot about microbiome, a lot about hormonal regulation in your body, and also a lot about, and especially about what you're putting in your gut, the fuel that you are providing to your gut, and therefore the fuel that you're providing to your body. So yeah, IBS is a condition that is quite hard to treat because it requires a long-term, commitment, long-term relationship, and a teamwork with your patient to really get better.
Yeah, and it's super fascinating what you were talking about, like the gut brain connection and the mechanism behind that. And definitely a very complicated relationship. But can you talk to us a little bit about how do we keep that microbiome healthy? So, like, what are your thoughts on things like fiber and pre and probiotics? And what are some things you recommend to your patients to keep that flora thriving in there?
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the most common questions I get from patients and from friends and from everyone I know. It's what I think about taking a prebiotic, a probiotic, if that's going to help them. And from my scientific, traditional Western medicine, education and background, I always base my response in science, right? Um, Science and very rigorous trials have not 100% proven that probiotics are the holy grail, unfortunately. Okay. So that doesn't mean that if you take a probiotic, a supplement, pre or probiotic, it's not going to help you or it's going to harm you. Definitely, there's not going to be harm. It may harm your pocket a little bit because many times the supplements are really expensive, right? So unfortunately, I cannot recommend taking a probiotic or a prebiotic to everyone and tell them, yes, this is going to be definitely beneficial for you. Okay. However, I was talking with someone about this a couple of days ago. Say you're eating fast food every day, Beth, and you are, just not taking care of yourself, and you are involved in an abusive relationship on your day to day. Do you think that taking a probiotic it's going to make any difference in your gut function?
I love
Right?
that you said that. You're right.
It's never going to make any difference because it's going to put a band-aid on a much, much deeper wound that is there, right? So that's where it comes, this relationship that you have to create with your provider. It can be your GI doctor, but also multidisciplinary approach with your nutritionist, with even a mental health provider if necessary, and really dig deeper into, how is my lifestyle really affecting my gut before I just buy or purchase this little pill that I am hopeful it's going to fix it, right? Now, if you're already, doing pretty good and you want to provide or supplement yourself with something additional, sure, you can give it a try. Why not? If I have to recommend something, it would always be to go the natural route with natural pre and probiotics that you can find in many products in your day-to-day, right? Like sourdough, kefir, yogurts, and sauerkraut are excellent sources of probiotics. And then prebiotics, that's the food that you're going to give to that microbiome for them to produce, the good chemicals in your body. And that's going to be, of course, the classic healthy diet that we hear: fruits, vegetables, fiber. So that's going to be my primary recommendation over telling you, hey, just go and purchase an over-the-counter gummy.
It's an excellent point because I think too often just in our culture, we rely so heavily on supplements, but we need to remember that key word, right? Like, it's a supplement. It's not what you should be relying on. It's totally individualized. And if you have an area of deficiency or you're not getting enough of something, that's when, in addition to real food sources, that it could be helpful. So I love that you just don't provide that kind of generalized guidance for your patients. And to your point, in your research, have you also seen regarding the bioavailability or how much we're actually able to absorb being better from our real food sources? So like yogurt over taking a probiotic supplement. Have you come across that in research at all?
So I don't specialize in that type of research, I'm going to say. But it's also just different components of live microbiomes in each thing, right? You're not going to find the same type of bacteria in kefir versus sourdough versus sauerkraut versus a pill that contains millions of probiotic, microorganisms. So that's a tough one. I think that you would still absorb it from the supplement or the diet, but why purchase something if you can just add it into your day-to-day, ingestion,
Agreed. And do you
right?
share the same thought process along with fiber, like a fiber supplement like Metamucil versus really just trying to boost those whole grains, fruits, and vegetables?
Yeah, with fiber, it's that's a really good question because I think it's very easy to recommend, please, patient, please add fiber to your diet. But many of my dear veterans that I take care of in the hospital, they are so set in their ways of what they eat every day that it's gonna be really hard for them to just incorporate, 2 cups of fruits or kiwis with the skin that I always like recommending for fiber to my patients. So for them, I really like to add this little additional fiber powder because I feel like maybe they really want to incorporate the fiber in their diet, but are they really going to stick to it? So that's when I try to also supplement after telling them, okay, let's try to do this with your diet. But if you still are not getting there with your daily requirements of fiber and water, because fiber by itself without the water, it's even going to cause more constipation probably. Then I try to give them the additional supplement that it's a little easier to just dissolve and drink.
Definitely. Totally makes sense. Yeah, I love that. And then,
Yes.
so we talked a little bit about the connection between gut health and brain health. Can you just give us an overview on how exactly is your gut health related to your overall immune function? Because I really think that just goes over a lot of our heads.
Right. It is not 100% well described. Uh, Researchers are still trying to figure out all these mechanisms that are so complex. But what is believed, Beth, is that our microbiome, those are billions and trillions of bacteria that we naturally have in our colon, in our large intestine. These little guys produce chemicals. Those chemicals are called neurotransmitters, right? That are also produced by the brain. And we have receptors throughout our whole bodies for these chemicals. These chemicals are serotonin, dopamine. All those chemicals are responsible to make us feel in one way or a different way. Okay. So it's a bidirectional approach between the gut and the brain. If your microbiome is really affected and you have what we call dysbiosis, those bacteria are not producing the nice serotonin, dopamine that they should be. And that impacts the brain. On the other hand, if you're going through problems in your life, emotions, trauma, stress, and your brain is not producing those chemicals, the gut also has receptors for those chemicals. So it's a bidirectional approach and kind of a vicious cycle that really impacts the way in which we digest and move things throughout our GI tract. It's believed also that those chemicals will impact the immune system and will impact the hormonal system through different very complex chemical pathways. So if you really look into literature now about microbiome, you will find lots and lots and lots of experiments that are typically done with mice, in which some mice will have certain type of microbiome, others will have a different type of microbiome. And it's been seen that there's an association of this microbiome with different types of disorders, right? Anxiety, depression, even addictions, thyroid disease. All of those are experiments that, are published and people can read about them. But it's also very difficult to say 100% this can be applied to humans quite yet. it's an evolving area of research, I would say.
Sure. And it's just so interesting. And it just kind of reinforces the fact that we really just don't have one localized process, right? Like you can't just address your GI health. Like it impacts so many different things. Same with your gut health, brain health, immune function. They are all so closely related. So it really is just like a full lifestyle approach to kind of address all of your body systems. So definitely makes sense. So let me ask you a question now, because with hormonal changes with women, we do see, again, we're not 100% sure why, but we do see a decreased absorption rate in the gut with certain nutrients and just relating to these hormonal changes. And we're also seeing, I believe, a rise in colorectal cancer in women. Do you think are they at higher risk because of those hormonal changes? Or again, is it just so multifactorial relating to
Yeah.
genetics and diet and lifestyle factors?
Yeah, that is quite a loaded question, Beth, but absolutely important to touch on this topic about rising colorectal cancer rates, especially in younger individuals, both men and women, present at earlier ages now with colorectal cancer. This is a sort of recent finding. Um, in the past, I would say 5 years, there has been a lot of research trying to move the needle towards doing screening for colorectal cancer at earlier ages. And we were able to accomplish starting colorectal cancer screening at 45 instead of 50. I would say this change happened about 2 or 3 years ago already, and insurances to cover for these tests. So that is really great, a great progress. But we see colorectal cancer even earlier than age 45. And there's a lot of research going into trying to answer the question of why. Why are we seeing more colorectal cancer so early? I think it's very intuitive to think that it's going to be a lot of environmental and dietary factors related with this rise, right? But we still are not quite sure because this is research in progress again. But in the US, there's definitely, we have to accept it. We have an American diet which contains a lot of ultra processed foods that are given to even children, right? Since they are little kids, and then you get used to just eating a certain way, and you go on and on and on with your life eating certain foods that, many people don't know this, because why would they know that these foods are already marked as type 1 carcinogens by the World Health Organization. And I'm talking about processed meats. Processed meats are a type 1 carcinogen. Not many people know about this, and they keep eating it. Red meats are a type 2A carcinogen by the World Health Organization. Again, anyone in the audience can just Google it. It's right there, but people don't know it. So they keep having a diet that is very rich in red meat, because guess what? Red meat is very delicious. I also love eating red meat. And if I didn't know that it's not going to be so great for my gut and my health in general, I probably would eat way more often. So yeah, I think that it's a loaded question in that sense. But if anything, we have to make sure to spread the word about getting your screening for colorectal cancer as soon as you have to, which is 45 years old now, for any average risk individual. What that means is for any person who doesn't have a first degree relative with colorectal cancer. If you already have a family history of colorectal cancer, then the recommendations may change and you may need to get a screen even earlier than 45.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I'm so glad there's been such improvement. I do think we have a long way to go still as far as insurance reimbursement for younger screenings and things like that. But improvements, progress. So we'll take it for sure. So, in
Absolutely.
your opinion and in your experience, as far as things that are in our control about what we can do to avoid or limit, definitely it sounds like red meat, processed meats. Is there anything else on your list that's like an absolutely no, not worth the risk kind of food?
Well, anything that it's been marked a type 1 or type 2 carcinogen, um, processed foods, canned stuff, it's also really processed and has a lot of conservatives, preservatives um, in it. So obviously trying to avoid those things as much as possible. Of course, you have heard that fast food, it's going to contain a lot of those processed foods within the fast food product, those burgers, etc. I'm not saying, Beth, please. I tell my patients, if you want a burger once in a blue, oh, I mean, it's okay to have it here and there. I love my pizza. I love my French fries, right? But it's different when it's your lifestyle. It should not be a lifestyle of eating those things. Um, I would say that another problem is with very, sugary stuff, things containing high fructose corn syrup, which is quite inflammatory, and then just pop with tons and tons of sugar, not only for your gut health but your anything health, right? It's going to create issues with diabetes, insulin resistance, etc. So high sugary meals, definitely try to avoid that as much as possible, or drinks.
I love, like, I share the same philosophy of balance. So it's so nice to hear from a gastroenterologist herself that, like, it's okay to have the occasional food because I think so often we view it as an all or nothing thing. And that's when people just don't make any changes at all because they get scared that it's going to be too restrictive. So I think it's so important to understand, like, hey, listen, like, where in healthcare we see these things, but we're human too. Like, we enjoy the occasional French fry, occasional red steak, or just all of that in moderation is okay. Really, just what you
Right.
were saying, it's the lifestyle, like it's the consistent, if it's a day to day thing, that's where it's really going to significantly increase your risk and it becomes a concern.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also, when you are so restrictive with everything, it's simply just not sustainable. And you need to have a lifestyle in which you have healthy habits that are sustainable, long
Totally,
term
totally
impact.
agree.
Mhm,
Exactly.
mhm.
Exactly. And so tell me, Daniela, you being a fitness instructor, which I absolutely love because you just like lead by example for your patients. Like, you are the epitome of a healthy, balanced lifestyle. So, can you tell us, is there a known connection between exercise and specifically gut health?
Absolutely. And Beth, I wish I had time to keep being a fitness instructor. I used to be in my good medical school times, not anymore, but I am still a fitness, avid person. I love working out. Working out for me, it's like my medicine. It just gives me energy to have energy to see my patients, to give the best I can for my patients. I have to be in that mindset of, okay, I worked out today and, now I can go on with my day because I had at least that 1 hour, 1 hour and a half of self care. For me, that is so important to implement so that you can then be your best self out of the gym or wherever you work out. Now, regarding gut health and exercise, absolutely, an amazing impact on gut health for many reasons. First of all, movement helps you move your gut, helps you digest better, right? Many times when we see patients who have been hospitalized for ABC reason, and they are in their hospital bed for many days, they also get very constipated because of lack of movement. Sometimes even obstructed because they have not moved around. When we deal in the hospital, for example, with intestinal obstructions, one of the prescriptions for the patient is to start walking around, moving around. So movement is going to help your gut wake up. That's number one. Number two, it's been proven that when we work out, our body produces the same chemicals that we were talking about before. This serotonin, this dopamine, all those good chemicals that many times our body produces with recreational drugs, for example. So that's why some people get a little bit addicted to exercise, because it's the same rewarding chemicals going on and having a peak in our bodies. Okay. But this is, I always tell and joke with my patients, this is the only addictive medicine that I will prescribe to you. It's exercise, right? Yeah, you will just have an impact in your mental health, not only because you are also, socializing, taking care of yourself, but chemically you're producing these amazing neurotransmitters that are going to help you feel better. And then on top of that, if you're hydrating yourself, drinking plenty of fluids while you exercise, that's also going to help your gut, digest better, and your bowel movements probably will be of better quality as well.
Huge part of the equation to set you up for that sustainable, successful, healthy lifestyle. So for sure. Now, Tell me, Daniela, for the average person, like if I wanted a non-invasive way to know, is my gut inflamed? Do I have a healthy gut? Like you'll occasionally come across these test kits that can be ordered online. Do you recommend any of those for like the average person that doesn't necessarily have a specific issue to see a gastroenterologist, but they're just curious and really wanting to optimize their gut health?
Yeah. Unfortunately, Beth, my answer is going to be very straightforward for this one, and that is no. I do not recommend any of these kits or testing. The reason being because it's not scientifically proven. If there was such a test that can tell me this is wrong with you and therefore do this, that is validated by scientific research via clinical trials, then absolutely, right? Absolutely. Everything that, scientists work towards is trying to prove with very, very rigorous evidence that one thing works or not. And once scientists make breakthroughs in this way, then it will go through a process of approval by the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, and then it can be commercialized. Many of these products out there, I believe, take advantage of the fact that we as traditional doctors cannot tell you with a simple test, this is what's wrong. The patient wants a very straightforward answer and an easy answer. They want a test that says this is wrong with you. IBS and functional disorders don't work that way because, again, it's a multifactorial thing. We have to see it as a big picture. It is not just one single thing that is wrong, and you take this pill and it's going to go away. And that's what is hard, because then you have to commit, the patient has to commit to work on their lifestyle in general. And that requires some effort. And the first step to getting better is accepting the diagnosis. Once you accept that, okay, no test is going to tell you this is wrong exactly, and no pill is going to 100% just cure it, then you can start realizing, okay, let's dig deeper. Let's see what I might not be doing very well in my day-to-day life, or again, it comes back to relationships, it comes back to your eating habits, it comes back to many things. So no, there's no one test that I could recommend to just check, for example, your microbiome, right? Because that's something that is not well described. We all have different microbiomes, Beth. Yours is completely different from mine. And this, we're talking about billions of bacteria that we have. This is harder, hundreds of times harder to describe than the DNA code, right? So it's something that you cannot just test and tell the patient, you have this is wrong, and I'm going to fix it like this. I think that sometimes industry takes advantage of patients because patients are feeling terrible, right? They are desperate for an answer. And that's when industry marketing takes advantage of these patients, giving them an easy pill supplement to take, or giving them these tests to tell them, hey, yes, this is wrong, because patients need to hear that something is wrong.
I think so many women, I think so many women are going to appreciate hearing that, because it's going to save them money and time. Again, I think it's one of those things that's hard to hear, because we all, of course, again, like in this culture, want the quick fix. We don't want to have to put in a lot of money or time, but we're learning more and more, supported by research, that it does take time, and it does take an investment of your time and money and energy to see these lifestyle changes, but it's worth it, because people that are, looking for those quick fixes or getting those GI tests online, they will wind up seeing a gastroenterologist or a physician who specializes in their issue down the road anyway, but it'll be after they spent X amount of money, they've delayed their symptoms for, could be months, could be years. So I'm so glad to hear you say that. And I'm sure many of our listeners will appreciate that as well. And again, I share, a large focus of my practice is perimenopause. And to your point, very similarly, it's not just sending you for blood work or a test and then diagnosing perimenopause. Okay, here's your treatment plan. Like, no. It is so wildly different for every woman. So absolutely, it's so individualized. They're presenting with different symptoms, just like their GI disorders. And you're not just going to see it show up on one test. It needs to be in a very important conversation that needs to be had between you and your provider. And then you work together. And yes, it's lifestyle changes, but it's something that's worth putting the energy and effort into. So I'm very glad to hear you say that.
Absolutely. And if I may add something else, even more dangerous would be having red flags in your gastrointestinal health, right? And by red flags, I mean things that are pretty scary and that should make you see a doctor right away, like blood in your stool or weight loss, right? Those two big red flags are something that, please bypass this over-the-counter or online GI tests that are not scientifically proven, because you may be experiencing something like colorectal cancer, inflammatory bowel disease, things that need to be timely diagnosed so that we can timely intervene with very specific therapies. So, that's where the danger comes when, patients, and again, we're all free individuals to go one route or the other, traditional medicine versus a more non-traditional approach. But when those red flags are there, the scary part is that the patient may come to us too late, when we cannot do much for them anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. That's very important. And so as we wrap up, Daniela, if you can give us maybe just 2 to 3 tips for like the everyday woman to start integrating into their daily lifestyle, not only just to improve gut health, but most importantly, to decrease their risk for colon or colorectal cancer, what would those things be?
Right. I think that these things need to be very specific, actionable things. It's very easy for me to tell you, oh, just eat healthier, right? No, patients don't know how to eat healthier necessarily. So very actionable things. First of all, Stop purchasing. Don't even have them available in your fridge. Type 1 carcinogens, type 2A carcinogens, mainly ham, bacon, hot dogs. Red meat, try to avoid as much as you can. Again, we spoke, Beth, that it's okay to have, a steak here and there. But if you're in your household, you're heavily eating cow's meat every day or every other day almost, that's going to impact. So that would be tip number 1. Second tip, fiber from dietary sources and water or fluids. Okay, combine those two. And fiber, what is recommended is that women have an intake of 25 grams of fiber daily, which again, if you tell me what's 25 grams, of course, like a majority of people will not know if I tell them 25 grams, right? So as an example, one great, actually scientifically proven fruit that has really great sources of fiber is kiwi fruit. And this was actually a clinical trial that was published in the American Journal of Gastroenterology. 2 kiwi fruits daily are equivalent to giving a patient something like Miralax or a laxative in terms of helping with constipation, or even better, right? If patients can tolerate eating the kiwi with the skin, it's even better. I know that's a big ask, but after this study came out, I have tried it with the skin myself. It doesn't taste as bad as you would think, Beth, but you can also put it in a smoothie, and you don't even feel the skin. The skin has 50% of the fiber from the kiwi is in the skin. So other things that have quite a bit of fiber, for example, a cup of raspberries and blueberries, which is an excellent source of antioxidants as well. Combine that with the kiwi daily, and superfoods like quinoa. Other things could be your good sourdough. Add those probiotics from natural sources, sauerkraut, and then don't forget to drink more or less 8 glasses of water daily. That's going to improve your nutrition. And then tip number 3, it's going to be move. You don't have to exercise and do like 45 minutes of cardio every day, right? Like it's not like a matter of going hardcore to the gym and super aggressively, but move your body, go for walks, do stretches at home, move as much as you can. And that's going to impact your gut health as well.
Yes, such simple, realistic changes, right? And I'm laughing about the kiwi because one of my patients was like, Beth, that's like fuzzy tree bark. I'm not eating that. And I was like, just try it. It's not as bad as it seems, because years ago, like I was hesitant as well. But give it a try. And then if you're still not a big fan of it, that's exactly what I have my patients do, is throw it into a smoothie, because even though it's mechanically breaking it down a little bit, it's still loaded with easy source of fiber. So you're absolutely right. Well,
yes,
Daniela, thank you.
I love kiwis.
Yes. So thank you so much for your time and your expertise today. It's truly terrifying seeing the rise of colorectal cancer, especially in the younger population and women. So even just being able to be aware, be mindful, and implement some of these changes will be huge and just very powerful. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yes, Beth. And if I may add one more thing before we leave, speaking about colorectal cancer and screening for this, please know that screening is not only colonoscopy. Many patients think that screening for colorectal cancer is only doing this invasive colonoscopy test. It's not. We have other ways to screen in a non-invasive way, just with a stool test. So if you are one of those patients who don't necessarily feel very attracted to getting a colonoscopy done, which by the way, colonoscopies are great because we can at the same time remove polyps if we find them, those precancerous lesions. But if you are not the type of person who would like to start that way, then know that you can get screened with a stool test as well. So that's very important because many patients don't know about this option too. So just wanted to throw it out there.
So helpful to know. Thank you. Yeah, because I do think it deters many people hearing about the prep beforehand, like even though it feels like such a great nap during the procedure. So knowing that there's an alternative, less invasive option is key. So 45 years old, you said, right? For average risk people?
Absolutely. 45 years old for average risk. If you have a relative with colorectal cancer that was diagnosed at age 60 or earlier than that, then you have to get screened at least 10 years earlier than the time at which your relative was diagnosed. So it will depend if you have a first degree relative with colorectal cancer history already. But for average risk individuals, absolutely at age 45 now.
Perfect. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. And we really appreciate your time.
It was a pleasure, Beth. Thank you so much. And I'm excited to see how this comes out. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Daniela. Of course. If you're ready to invest in yourself to become the healthiest and happiest version of you, head over to my website, thelifestylepa.org, to learn more about my 3-month lifestyle program, where I offer a very personalized, whole-body approach to optimize your health. In addition to your 1-hour initial consultation, we have 30-minute bi-weekly Zoom visits. You receive my 45-page lifestyle handbook, lab work interpretation, unlimited communication and support through a secure messaging platform, 3 months of meal plans tailored to your needs, and guidance on mastering the 6 pillars of lifelong health: nutrition, movement, sleep, stress management, positive psychology, and social connections. I can't wait to connect with you and help you to truly optimize your health once and for all.